the government, if this passes, the government will be allowed to discriminate against you as long as they're doing it in the name of reversing past discrimination or trying to prevent future discrimination. The language says you can't discriminate based on gender expression. Okay, well, so now whose rights are more protected? Are girls' and women's rights to have privacy in bathrooms and locker rooms and dormitories and showers and prisons and, anything that's single sex is now going to come under scrutiny. What they've put on the ballot is a 2-sentence summary, the summary of what this actual change to our Constitution would say. But in doing that, they break it down into 2 sentences. In doing that, they leave out other details. They leave out an entire paragraph.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. Today we have a very special guest, Bobbie Anne Cox. She is a constitutional law attorney, and she has been fighting tirelessly to protect our constitutional freedoms. Bobbie Anne recently took on the state of New York and is suing the legislature for improperly putting Proposition 1 on the New York ballot. Now, if you live in the state of New York, I implore you to stay with us so that you can better be informed about this dangerous and deceptive proposal. This is indeed a Trojan horse of epic proportions. Bobbie Anne, welcome to Better for America. It's great to have you with me.
Yes, thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Bobbie Anne, you've dedicated years of your career to defending individual rights and standing up to government overreach, and you've described Proposition 1 as a Trojan horse for government overreach. Now, for those unfamiliar, can you explain what Proposition 1 is and how it subtly grants the government more power while limiting individual freedoms?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a proposed change to our Constitution. So New Yorkers are going to be voting on this either later this month if they're doing early voting or on November 5th, which is election day. And if you don't see it at the bottom of your ballot, you're going to flip it over and it'll be on the back of your ballot. And it's called Proposal Number 1, but it sounds really nice when you read the language that's on the ballot. They've put on the ballot not the actual language that would go into the Constitution if this passes. Unfortunately, you don't even get to see that language on your ballot. What they've put on the ballot is a 2-sentence summary of what they think would be the summary of what this actual change to our Constitution would say. But in doing that, they break it down into 2 sentences. In doing that, they leave out other details. They leave out an entire paragraph of what would actually go into our Constitution. So New Yorkers are reading only part of the story when they look at that language on their ballot. And it sounds good because they say, protect against unequal treatment, vote yes, and you will put these protections into the Constitution. Vote no, and these constitutional protections will not be added into the Constitution. So, of course, most New Yorkers are going to say, yeah, I should vote for this. Of course, we want everyone to be treated equally. But when you look at the actual language that would be going into our Constitution, you see that they want to change our Constitution and put in protections that we never intended to have in there, and protections that are already covered under our laws here in New York State. And I'm happy to give some details on the actual language. Our current Constitution says you can't discriminate against somebody based on their race, religion, creed, or color. What they want to add now is that you also can't discriminate against somebody based on their age, disability, national origin, ethnicity, sex, which includes sexual identity, gender expression, gender identity, pregnancy outcomes, pregnancy healthcare, and autonomy. I mean, there is a list of a dozen new classes that they want to add into the Constitution. But what happens when you have such broad language is that you're going to see these protected classes, old and new, pitted against one another. And there's going to become a mad case. I mean, we're going to see lawsuits popping up all over this state because you're going to see these classes saying, well, who's more protected, right? It is a parent's right to raise their child, because you do have a constitutional right to raise your children in this country. It's not wording in our federal constitution, but SCOTUS has ruled many times that parents do have a constitutional right to raise their children, not the government. So whose rights are more protected? Is it the parents' rights are more protected, or the children's rights? Because this language would basically give children of any age the ability to make their own decisions. And without parental consent, without parental guidance, what is it going to do if you can't discriminate based on age to our senior citizens who receive specific benefits because they are senior citizens, right? So now that's going to become challenged. They're going to say, well, you can't discriminate based on age. So how come the senior citizens are getting these special perks and benefits? Why don't the rest of us get all the same perks and benefits that the seniors are getting? And then that will detract from what our seniors are receiving as assistance. The language says you can't discriminate based on gender expression. Okay, well, so now whose rights are more protected? Are girls' and women's rights to have privacy in bathrooms and locker rooms and dormitories and showers and prisons and anything that's single sex is now going to come under scrutiny. And they're going to say, well, is it a woman's right? Is a woman's right more important than a trans person's rights? Right? Who gets to have their rights upheld in a situation where a biological male wants to use the women's locker room or wants to go to an all girls school? And it works both ways. What happens to all boys schools that we have here in New York State? Now, all of a sudden, do women that want to identify as a man get to go to those schools?
This is not an equal rights amendment. I mean, clearly it's how they're pitching it, but it's certainly not. And a lot of people are concerned that if Prop 1 passes, that this could be a lead-in to illegals voting in our elections. Can you elaborate a little bit more there? How it might reshape the governance in New York, especially regarding non-citizen rights and access to taxpayer-funded programs?
Absolutely. That is a huge problem, too, with this language. If you can't discriminate against somebody based on it says ethnicity and national origin, well, that means national origin means the place where you came from outside the United States, right? It's a country other than our country. So now you will see non-citizens in New York State having a constitutional right to demand equality with everything that citizens are allowed to do and receive. That could be things like, taxpayer-funded benefits, whether that's, the right to, let's say, subsidized healthcare, subsidized housing, welfare benefits, Medicaid, Medicare, those types of things are things that citizens receive. The right to vote, our sacred right to vote, to decide who's going to be running our government, who's going to make our laws, who's going to be enforcing our laws. That right to vote is how the people control the government. It's how the people speak through the government. Now, if you have this language in our Constitution, that opens the door for people that are not from our country, whether they're here legally or illegally, it doesn't really matter. They're just going to be protected under national origin. And that opens the door for them to argue, hey, look, we should have the right to vote too. And so we are now seeing the complete breakdown of our autonomy.
Absolutely. And it leads to legalizing reverse discrimination in a sense. That's almost what you're describing.
Well, paragraph B, which is the part of this proposed amendment that you see nothing of on the ballot, Part B is not referenced on the ballot. Part B is not included in the summary on the ballot. Part B basically says that the government, if this passes, the government will be allowed to discriminate against you as long as they're doing it in the name of reversing past discrimination or trying to prevent future discrimination. So it opens the door to allowing our government to discriminate, and it would be legal. Meaning, if they pass a law or they make a regulation or they make a rule and it's discriminatory against you as an individual or you as a class, whatever class you belong to, they'll be able to point to the Constitution and say, well, I'm sorry, now it's legal. We're allowed to
Right.
do this because we are protecting a class that used to be discriminated against. Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. This would, if it passes, this would basically legalize what people refer to as reverse discrimination.
Yes, it really does. It opens the door to, future radical bills that would destroy parental oversight, involvement in your children's education, medical decisions. Bobbie Anne, Kathy Hochul and the Democrats, they're attempting to define this constitutional amendment as being all about abortion. But that's a lie. I mean,
It is.
New York already allows abortion until the end of the ninth month.
Yes, you have hit the nail on the head. This is not an abortion amendment. Like you said, Kathy Hochul, the politicians in Albany, they are pushing this so hard, and they are saying, well, if you want to protect your right to an abortion, you have to vote yes on this proposal. First of all, the word abortion appears nowhere in the language. It doesn't appear on the ballot language, and it also doesn't appear in the language that would actually go into our Constitution. That's the first thing. Second thing, abortion, as you noted, has been protected in New York State for over 50 years. It's codified in our laws. And third, abortion's not under attack in this state. Nobody is trying to get rid of it. And I'm sure never would, because that's not what the people of New York want, right? So that is really just a smokescreen. I believe it's a way for them to drive their voter base out and try and get them to come out and vote. Because, if you look at what's going on in our communities today, they really can't motivate their voter base to get out and vote because, the economy is shot. People don't feel safe walking down the street. People can't afford, gas and rent. And, so they're looking to this abortion poll to try to get people out to vote. Now, I actually did a comparison of the language that New York is using in our proposed amendment. And I looked at other states around the country that are also putting on their ballots an amendment to amend their constitution to include abortion as a right. And when you look at those other states and the language that they're using on their proposals, it clearly says you have the right to an abortion and here are the parameters. New York's doesn't say that at all. New York's language doesn't give a right to an abortion. It doesn't even use the word abortion, and it doesn't use the word right. All it says is you can't be discriminated against based on these, 12 new categories. And ethnicity, national origin, sex, age, disability, those have nothing to do with abortion.
Absolutely.
So they're not giving you the whole story. They really are deceiving the New York voters, and it's because they don't want you to take the time to do the homework.
That's right. And it is so important that people listening, that you tell your friends, your family, your neighbors, you've got to say, vote no for Proposition 1. This is going to hurt. It's going to tear at the fabric of New York. We are already going in such a bad direction. This will make things exponentially worse. Tell us a little bit about where you're at with fighting back. You won at the trial court level. It was appealed and then reversed. Where do you see this heading with the work you're doing?
Unfortunately, our legal battle is not going to be able to excel. It's not going to be able to go any further. Like you said, we did win at the trial court level back in the spring. This proposal was removed from the ballot at that time. Unfortunately, Letitia James, the Attorney General here in New York, appealed. It went up to the appellate court. The appellate court reversed, not on the merits. I have to say they reversed and threw the case out on a technicality, which really was untrue. But we did try to appeal this case to the highest court in New York State. Unfortunately, the court didn't want to take the case. And therefore, we are now stuck with Proposal 1 on the ballot. And the ballots are already printed and out. I've been talking to people who have been doing the mail voting. And the ballots are already printed. They're not going to change at this point. So now the effort has to be in educating New Yorkers that, this is not about abortion. Abortion is not under threat in New York. This is about an agenda of really putting, I would say, every class possible into the Constitution. And what it would do is flip our norms upside down. There will be a tremendous weakening of parental rights if this passes. It's already happening. I mean, these things are, if people are wondering, these things are already happening in New York. Last year, the New York State Department of Education issued a guidance booklet, and it tells schools how they are supposed to deal with a student that wants to change their gender or, transition, or even just is thinking about it, exploring it. And that guidance issued by the state of New York says you are not allowed to tell the parent what's going on with the student at school. It
Wow.
literally is driving a wedge between the parent and the child. Now, that's completely unconstitutional, that guidance. But if this Prop 1 passes and becomes part of our Constitution, that guidance that the state issued will now all of a sudden become constitutional, right? Because you can't discriminate against somebody based on age. So it's really dangerous. There's so much behind these words that people don't understand. And that's why we're really trying to get the word out.
Well, you've labeled it what it is. It is a Trojan horse of epic proportions. Proposition 1 is really a terrible, terrible deal. It would amend Section 11 of Article 1 of the New York State Constitution to include all of these things that are going to result in what we are calling reverse discrimination, stripping parents of rights. There are so many negative intentional consequences I see. And people need to know about this. It'll destroy the integrity of girls' sports, erode parental rights, extend constitutional rights to illegal aliens. I mean, this is just something that every New Yorker must know about. What final message would you like to leave our listeners? What do they need to know about how to better protect themselves against these kinds of bills and legislation? What can average, everyday, ordinary people do to help ensure that our freedoms are not undermined?
Yeah, I really encourage people to not only become informed, but stay informed. And then spread that information to your networks, your friends, your family, your neighbors, your coworkers, because the mainstream media does not pick up stories like this. And so, a great way to stay informed, we did just put up a website about Prop 1. People can get a lot more information if you go to www.voteno on Prop 1, and it's the number 1. So vote no on prop1.org. If you go to that website, you will have a lot of information. You can take the link to that website and share it. There's a media page on there that has a lot of articles and even some videos that you can watch. You can read the articles, share those with your networks. For sure, you can tell everybody that you encounter, please vote. A lot of people are kind of turned off, and they've kind of lost their confidence in our elections, I feel like, especially in New York. But if we don't get out and vote, this thing will pass. And if it passes, it's going to lead to a lot of just a lot of angst and a lot of stress and a lot of very unhappy New Yorkers whose rights are now being attacked by the government. So I really stress that people try to encourage everybody to get out and vote, even if you don't like the politicians that are on the ballot and you just want to vote no on Prop 1. We have to all participate, because if we just throw our hands up in the air and say, oh, I don't want to deal with it, it's crazy, I don't want to hear it. Yeah. If we do that, this thing is going to pass and we're going to have some really dire consequences as a result.
Yes. Well, this is such an important message, and I thank you so much for joining me. To all of you out there listening, be sure to stand up November 5th, vote no to Proposition 1. Help us save girls' sports. Every single common sense New Yorker must vote no on Proposition 1 on November 5th, or vote early if you can. This is so important. Share this video with friends and family, neighbors, your loved ones. Be sure to stay informed. Bobbie Anne Cox, thank you again for joining me today.
Yes, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for all you're doing, really to save our nation and to help each and every one of us protecting our rights. God bless you, and we look forward to having you back with us again soon.
Thank you.
And to all of you out there listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to renew or join AMAC. Go to amac.us. Check out our incredible member benefits. Don't forget, you'll get that incredible magazine delivered right to your mailbox. Join us at amac.us. That's it for today, folks. Have a wonderful day.
We are proud to have First Fidelity Reserve as our official bullion and rare coin partner, as they have supported AMAC for over a decade. Call First Fidelity Reserve, 800-336-1630. That's 800-336-1630, and get your free 38-page precious metals guide today.
The Better for America podcast is proud to be supported by Senior Resource. At Senior Resource, the focus is on empowering seniors, retirees, and their families. That's why they created the Senior Resource Podcast Network, a platform packed with informative podcasts that educate, inspire, empower, and even entertain. Their goal is simple: to provide expert advice on topics like retirement, Medicare, senior housing, aging in place, caregiving, and much more. With a variety of shows covering all the important issues, listeners will hear from subject experts and get helpful tips to make their retirement journey the best it can be. Visit seniorresource.com/podcasts and start listening today.